asked the driver, like, are you going to Stonehenge? That's where I live. He's like, yeah. So we're like, cool. So we hop in. As we're going in, Zoe's like, you already know where I live. Back in the summer of 21, sun is blazing hot. Me and my girl, let's call her Zoe. Me and her just standing on the street corner, trying to figure out where we're going. Cause she told me she's hungry. So I'm like, what do you want to eat? And you know how girls are. But as we're talking, an Uber stops. And the guy asks, hey, where you guys going? And it felt kind of weird, cause Uber guys don't approach people who did not request. So I'm like, nah, we good. He said, okay, then he took off. 2 minutes later, she's like, let's go to town. And I'm like, okay. And then I request for an Uber. For some reason, I tell her the name of the guy that took our request. Let's call him Sam. Sam is the Uber driver. So I'm like, Sam took our ride request. She's like, Sam is the guy who stopped there earlier on. In my head, I'm thinking, wait, how do you even know this? How do you know this guy's name? Like, she knows him by name. Anyway, I shrug it off. I'm like, it's possible, right? She could know this one guy, this one Uber guy. The guy shows up. Now, obviously, when we get in, he brings up the conversation. Like, I waited for you guys. You said you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, it's her fault. You know how women are. Then he turns to me. He's like, you should discipline her. Now, I get this, but at some point, he's emphasizing like you should discipline her, but he's saying it in a way of I should hit her. Like, I could tell. So I just look at her and I just keep quiet. I just, it's whatever. I don't know why this guy is giving me such horrible advice. But anyway, so I just blow it off. Fine. We get to town. Everything's cool. Now we're chilling at McDonald's. We get something to eat. We're talking. Everything's good. So we get done. Now it's time to go home. So we decided to take a taxi instead of an Uber. Me and my girlfriend, we live in separate locations. I was supposed to take a different taxi that goes to where I live. So now she convinces me, to use the same taxi. We're going to find a taxi that goes to both places. But I'm like, okay, cool. So we walk up to the main road and wait for a taxi. One stops. Zoe approaches the taxi driver. And she asks the driver, like, are you going to Stonehenge? That's where I live. He's like, yeah. So we're like, cool. So we hop in. As we're going in, Zoe's like, you already know where I live. Like, I hear this, but in my head, it doesn't click. Like, I doubt what I just heard. Like, it doesn't seem to register. Like, maybe I heard it wrong. So I just blow it off like I'm hearing things. It's all in my head, right? Cool. He takes off. He's driving. Everything is good. Then the driver turns back to my girlfriend. And he asks, he's like, are you going to Stonehenge? And she's like, nah, I'm not the one going to Stonehenge. You already know where I live. And then he's like, alright, cool. This time I heard it. I'm like, nah, this time I heard it. It's not me. She definitely said that. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm thinking this in my head. Like, what does she mean? This guy knows where she lives. But I keep quiet. So he keeps driving. So now let me put this into perspective. Here's the route. And taxi drivers would normally use this route. It's more convenient. You'd go straight, reach the T-junction, and it continues straight up until the intersection, and he'd make a left, and then he'd drop Zoe off, then head straight until the next T-junction, then he'd take a right, and then go drop me off, right? So he's driving. We get to the first T-junction. Instead of going straight, he makes a left. Now, in my head, I'm like, what is this guy doing? Is he going to drop me off first? It's a bit inconvenient, though. But I'm like, whatever, it's him. Cool. So he drives. Cool, it's fine. Drives up. We get to the second T-junction. So instead of going straight to drop me off, he makes a right and he stops there by the corner, turns back to me and says, "You can get off here and wait for other taxis to go to Stonehenge." Now me, I'm confused at this point. Like, we asked this guy before we got on and he said yes, he's going to Stonehenge. I think about speaking out, but I was like, nah, taxi drivers. So I just keep quiet, I get off. Getting off, my mind is running wild at this point. I'm thinking, didn't we ask him? Like, now I'm doubting. Did we ask him? Did he hear us properly? Like, nah, I'm sure we asked him. But as I'm thinking this, I realize, like, wait, I'm not the one who asked him. My girlfriend did. And as soon as he found out that she's not the one who's going to Stonehenge, he changes his mind. Now he's not going anymore. It's a bit weird, but as I'm thinking this, he leaves, okay? He goes and drops off Zoe. Now I'm thinking, like 2-3 minutes later, after dropping Zoe off, I see a taxi coming from the same direction. And now I'm thinking, okay, here's a taxi, I can get on and go home. But it's coming from the same direction. So as it's turning, I see this taxi driver and it's the same guy. Same guy who was dropping off Zoe. The same guy who left me by the corner. And he sees me. And he sees me, see him, see me. And he does not flinch. He literally drives past me. Straight up. This guy drives past me. And he's driving towards the same direction towards my house. Obviously doing this on purpose. Now I'm confused because I don't know this guy. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? Why is this guy giving me such vibes? I text Zoe. I'm like, yo, what's up? What's going on here with this taxi guy? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he just literally drove past me towards Stonehenge after he told me that he's not going there. She's like, no, I don't know what's wrong with him. Then I asked, like, do you know this guy? She's like, no, not really. Well, he once asked me for my numbers and I said no. Maybe he's holding a grudge and he's taking it out on you or something. I don't know. Now at this point, I'm so confused. Like, to be disrespected by somebody you don't know because of somebody else or out of pettiness or jealousy. Now I'm thinking, nah, man, there's more to this story. Now I'm also thinking of the Uber guy.
Wait a minute.
How he was giving me such weird vibes. Like, this all can be a coincidence. Like, all these guys, this taxi driver and this Uber guy. And it was at this point that I realized, like, nah.
She belongs to the streets.